It's gun rally day in Richmond, Virginia. We've got all kinds of stuff for you on that. The New York Times made a bold endorsement, or two. We'll tell you about that. And finally, we honor an American hero. Long overdue. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Today is the day in Virginia, a day we have told you has been coming for quite some time. We all know what happened. We don't have to belabor the point. Virginia once red, now purple, now hopefully not blue, but it went blue last election. They have a completely leftist governor, a leftist legislature. And again, let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, these are not your father's Democrats. These are not your father's leftists. These leftists want to seize more and more power. They don't look at you and your rights and think, live and let live. He's fine. No. That's your dad's leftists. These leftists mean business. And so they walk into power at the state legislature and they say to themselves, how do we make hundreds of thousands of our own citizens felons overnight by declaring magazines over 10 rounds to be a felon? Well, that's where we are. And so they're having all these rallies today in Virginia, and we'll talk about how the media has portrayed that in just a moment. But let us not forget Governor Ralph Blackface Northam is currently in charge. This is what he had to say.
We're seeing threats of violence. We're seeing threats of armed confrontation and assault on our Capitol. But we have received credible intelligence from our law enforcement agencies that there are groups with malicious plans for the rally that is planned for Monday. This includes out-of-state militia groups and hate groups planning to travel from across the country to disrupt our democratic process with acts of violence. They are not coming to peacefully protest. They are coming to intimidate and to cause harm. But no one wants another incident like the one we saw in Charlottesville in 2017. We will not allow that mayhem and violence to happen here.
Yeah, I would really like to see the credible intelligence that there was going to be all this violence. Because, by the way, as you probably already know by now, Governor Northam took those credible threats, the credible intelligence of potential violence, and he went ahead and declared a state of emergency around the Capitol to ban weapons. That's weird. The governor who wants to ban weapons, and the people don't want him to ban weapons, and so there's a big rally of the people who don't want the weapons banned, and the governor found credible intelligence and a reason to ban weapons. You know what? Probably a total coincidence. Let's move on. Well, as you may imagine, you look at the rally and think, oh, it's a bunch of gun owners. Don't want the government taking their guns. The United States American media looks at the rally and thinks those are a bunch of scary, unwashed rubes, and somebody should go out there and scold those people. Allow us to begin with the United States media's greatness on how they cover the rally today. First, we had NBC's very own Gabe Gutierrez, who tweeted out a video, and this is what he said. Before we get to the video, this is what he said about the video. Quote, chants of "we will not comply" from gun rights protesters in Virginia. For one, I hope that's what they were chanting. But two, if you're going to lie, Gabe, it's probably better if you don't actually attach the video with it. This is the video of what they were saying. This is the weirdest version I've ever heard of "we will not comply." Almost sounded like the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, well, I'm sure the NBC's right, and I'm sure we're wrong. Whatever, forget about that. Well, he was far from being alone, ladies and gentlemen. MSNBC's Matt Miller said this, quote, if African-American protesters showed up at rallies for civil rights decked out like this, the Second Amendment would have been repealed decades ago. Yes, that's probably why the entire agenda of the Democrat Party involves cramming black people into large urban centers where they then disarm them to make everybody reliant on the government for protection. And by the way, it's this very weird thing, the way leftists view race. I'm not going to sit here and do this thing everyone loves to do. I'm colorblind. I don't see color. I see color because I have eyes. But it's this very weird thing that's all they see. They look at a group of people and they think to themselves, oh, look, there's a black guy. Oh, they got what, 2, 3, 4 women? I didn't see that one in the back. I don't see any Eskimos. Do you see any Eskimos? Well, at least let's see, do they have any Hispanic? Who looks at life in that way? I just don't look at life in that way. And by the way, the divide in this country, no matter what the media wants to convince you of, it's not white people and black people. It's not Hispanics. It's not the major divide in the United States of America. It's urban and it's rural. It's what you're seeing right now in Virginia. The vast, vast quantity of Virginia, over 90 counties, are blood red and protesting this. That many counties, that's more of a geographical thing. There's more than 0. That many counties, that's Northern Virginia. That's the little blue section. That's the red section of Virginia, ladies and gentlemen. It's crazy out there. Well, you know, when the media looks at gun rights people and they look at don't tread on me flags, they don't just see people who don't want the government on them. They don't just see people who love weapons. They don't just see people who respect the Second Amendment. They do this thing that, let's be honest, the media has been doing for a long time, and they want to automatically declare anybody who owns weapons, who believes in their Second Amendment, as racist, or as this tweet from Ben Collins says, white nationalists. Quote, reporters covering tomorrow's white nationalist rally in Virginia. I'm absolutely begging you, verify information before you send it out tomorrow, even if it's a very sensational rumor you heard from a cop. Don't become a hero in neo-Nazi propaganda circles with made-up stuff. Well, that's weird, a white nationalist rally. I didn't know they were having one of those. But you see, people, this is the problem the media has made. Yes, the left is very aggressive. Yes, they're very good at labeling you, labeling me. This person's evil, that's evil, you're evil. But the problem is, once you've labeled everybody in the world who's against you a racist, everybody against you a white nationalist, what you've done is you've ruined the meaning of the word. I hear somebody called a white nationalist anymore, I don't even look into it. I just assume the media is lying. And at all times, you should assume the media is lying. Why? What have I always taught you? None of what you see is real. MSNBC's Craig Melvin, well, he apparently not a big fan of gun rights.
Thousands of gun rights activists, white nationalists, militia groups, all swarming the Virginia state capitol in Richmond. They're protesting state bills there that would limit handgun purchases. The bills would also require background checks as well.
I love how they just mix that in, don't you? Gun rights groups and white nationalists and militia groups and stuff. That's how they do it. You're all just one and the same to them, ladies and gentlemen. You're all just people who should be disarmed so you can go crawling to beg for your sustenance from the federal government. Please don't hurt me, Daddy. Get serious. Well, the sad part about today in Virginia was it was only white people who showed up, except that's a lie. There were black people everywhere.
The real reason I'm out here is I do not support in any way, shape, or form Governor Northam's and the Democrats' gun control. What I also don't support is the fact that every news piece you've seen on this weekend, they've always brought up the issue of race, as though it's nothing but white rednecks and hillbillies out here who care for the Second Amendment, when actually Black Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Americans in general care about the Second Amendment. I work at a gun store part-time, and I can't tell you the number of customers I see of all races, all colors, all creeds, who care about the Second Amendment and who just want to peaceably live their lives, enjoy their rights, and the Second Amendment.
Well, okay, I know what you're thinking. Jesse, you found the one black guy, and he was, obviously, except they were everywhere.
The governor, who's known for blackface and or possibly having a Klan's hood on, has the audacity on MLK Day to declare executive order that would prevent people from lawfully protesting. This has been a long-standing rally where people have come and they've protested, and then on top of that, to add insult to injury, he wanted to push forth the narrative that white supremacists are stirring up issues. I feel comfortable here, haven't had any issues here. I don't know what the problem is. So it for me, as an African American on MLK Day, it's critically important that we preserve the ability to ourselves and our loved ones. And I will not allow anybody to push a narrative saying that there are racist people at these rallies. It's not true.
Good for him. Good for every single American who showed up there today. And you know what? Good for the president. He could have ignored this, especially because he didn't know when he sent this out if something bad was going to happen. But he actually voiced his support. Quote, "The Democrat Party and the great Commonwealth of Virginia are working hard to take away your Second Amendment rights. This is just the beginning. Don't let it happen. Vote Republican in 2020. I like seeing the president of the United States of America come out and support freedom-loving Americans. It matters. It emboldens people. Good job, President Trump. Keep rallying, people. Don't let the leftists come for your rights. We are going to talk to senior columnist at townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter, in just a second. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Now, let's talk about BetDSI, ladies and gentlemen. And BetDSI bailed me out this weekend. While you're going to betdsi.com/Jesse, again, it's betdsi.com/Jesse. Yesterday, let's be honest, the football games were not great. You wanted two great football games. I wanted two great football games. We had the NFC Championship. We had the AFC Championship. Woohoo, football. Two of the last three games. And they were blowouts, and they stunk, and you hated them, and you turned them off at halftime, and you're like, oh, this is horrible, it's a blowout. You know what I did? I watched every single stinking minute of the game. Why? Because I had some money on it. You should too. I'm not saying go break the family. Please don't do that. But go to betdsi.com/Jesse and use the promo code Jesse120. Again, JESSE120. When you do that at betdsi.com, when you put a little money on the game, look, maybe it's $50, maybe it's $100, maybe it's $10. But when you do that, it keeps you interested. It keeps games you don't even like interesting. I'm not big on regular season NBA, but I watch it now that I know about betdsi.com. And by the way, fastest payouts in the industry. Go bet, make your money. Now, again, betdsi.com, go sign up, deposit, start playing, and make some money. betdsi.com/Jesse, promo code Jesse120. Joining me now, one of the best people we get on TV on this show, frankly, anywhere out there, senior columnist at townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter. Kurt, first of all, before we get into what happened today, which not much happened today, except for a bunch of freedom-loving Americans in Virginia, how did Virginia get here? You know more about this stuff than anybody I know. And honestly, look, I don't like to get sentimental. I don't even like most states. I don't even like most people. But I love Virginia. I think about Virginia as the birthplace of freedom. It's Jefferson. It's Washington. It's Virginia. And now they're a bunch of commies. When did this happen?
Well, it happened for a number of reasons, and I saw it all happen here in beautiful California. You know, back when I was a kid, this is the state that was producing Ronald Reagan, producing electoral votes for Republicans again and again and again, and a combination of things happened. Among them, the fact that the Republican Party stopped organizing, got fat and lazy and stupid. I don't deal with them much, but I was dealing with one a while ago, and he said proudly, you know, I'm the head of the Republican Party in Maxine Waters' district, and I have been for 16 years. And I'm like, and you're proud of your track record of failure. That's what's happened in Virginia. They were running bad candidates. They weren't organizing. They were taking it for granted. And the Democrats were going out and doing the work. They didn't steal the election. They won the election because we didn't mobilize. That's changed. I
have heard that so many times, especially over the past week. And you ask people what happened in Virginia, and you'll get the answers that also matter, I'm sure. Immigration, you'll get the D.C. sprawl. We've talked about all those things. But I've talked to so many of my friends in Virginia, and they've said exactly what you just said. The Republican Party just kind of let it happen, and the voters stayed home, and they acted like it was just going to happen for them while Democrats were out there putting in the work. While Democrats are putting in the work, Republicans were sitting at home doing nothing, and now we have this. Now on to that question. What is this, Kurt? We have this gun grab in Virginia, and it's scary, and it's scaring people, and counties are coming out and standing up against it. Is this a new Democrat Party, or is this just always what they were, and now they feel more comfortable being, hey, we are going to take your guns?
Well, I think it's actually number two. I think this is a very important test for them, and that's why they're pushing back as hard as they possibly can. Because, look, I've written 2 books about this phenomenon, conservative insurgency and militant normals, where normal Americans say, wait a minute, it's my country. I'm not going to become a second-class citizen by a bunch of faculty lounge leftists. And, you know, this is the test. We didn't do this in California. It was a slow drive. But in Virginia, you know, they failed to boil the frog. They didn't do it slow enough. People got woke, people figured it out, and people came out. And I don't think we're going to see a ton of people staying home, not voting. Because, you know, in the old days, you could say, well, we elected a Democrat. He's not going to be that different from the Republican. They're all going to leave me alone. He may do some things I don't like, but it's not really going to affect me. Well, you know, turning you into a felon is kind of a serious step. And people, and that focuses people's minds.
But Kurt, that's what concerns me. I mean, and you're right. In California, it happened slower, and that's how all your freedoms eventually got eroded. They did it slower and slower. But what worries me is the speed and boldness with which the left moved in Virginia. These people are not all morons. I mean, most of them are morons, but they know dang well that most of rural Virginia, they're gun owners, they're lawful gun owners, and they didn't stop. They haven't stopped. And even though we had this big rally today, there's no indication that this legislation isn't going to actually go through. They have the votes. How did they get so bold? When did they get so bold?
Well, look, you and I are military folks. If we saw an opening, we'd attack. And what's a bigger invitation to attack than all the Republicans staying home when you're a Democrat out there saying exactly what you're going to do? Look, none of this is a surprise. Again, look, I'm not a fan of the Democrats, but they didn't lie to anybody. They told you exactly what they were going to do. And our people didn't listen. Well, now they're listening. And I think it was a smart move for the Democrats to try to move as fast as they could. Luckily, the people of Virginia said, wait a minute, whoa, stop, hell no. So, they got bold because, fortune favors the bold. Will they be able to push these through? I think they probably will. Will we be able to push them back out again once we retake Virginia? Yeah.
Kurt, what I saw happen in Virginia, even though by the grace of God, it's been totally peaceful today, at least at this point in time, nobody's gotten hurt so far, and I pray it stays that way on all sides. Let's just keep it that way. But I saw the setup to this, man, and I have to tell you, it really got the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I got uncomfortable with the governor all of a sudden declaring a state of emergency because, of course, the phantom white supremacists were out there to make trouble. I saw a fenced-off area. There were Virginia State Police that were leaking statements saying, hey, I wouldn't go to this. They're making this a powder keg. And that, to me, honestly, it reeked of a governor who wanted something to happen so he could blame it on the right. Am I being a tinfoil on my head conspiracy theorist, or is there something to that?
No, you're absolutely right. And it didn't help that there were a couple idiots out there doing stupid things. Alex Jones and his crew were not helping the situation. But really the story today was normal folks, regular people, just saying, wait a minute, I'm an American citizen. You're not going to take my rights. And they went out and they peacefully said, no, it's not going to happen. And I think it's unbelievably appropriate this was on Martin Luther King's birthday, because he changed American society, including in Virginia, through peaceful means, when a different group of Democrats was oppressing people and taking a different set of rights. Rights are rights. Rights are rights. And it is all the same thing. It is all the same struggle. Is government going to oppress people, or is government going to get out of the way of the citizens and let them live their lives?
Do the numbers matter? I mean, you've seen the videos. I know you have the pictures, thousands of people lined up. Does that actually matter? And I ask this because, you heard the Democrat congressman from Virginia talking about sending the National Guard. The governor of Virginia is talking about cutting off people's utilities. Do they look out the window and see those numbers and think, probably not a good idea? Or do they look out and think, oh, those are just the unwashed?
Well, I'm not sure it really matters what they think. I think they will continue to push through. But you're a Marine and you understand something better than anybody else what the secret weapon is. It's morale. It's knowing that you're not alone, knowing you're part of a team, knowing that you've got backup. If you are a freedom-loving American, a patriot who lives in Virginia and wants to protect his gun rights, after today, there can be no question. You are not alone in standing up for your rights. And that's important. Morale makes victory.
Senior columnist, townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter. Thank you, my friend. I'll see you soon.
See you, CPAC.
Well, we are far from done here, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle up and enjoy the rest of this ride. Hang on. Well, look, you and I both like to think of ourselves as being reasonably intelligent people. Well, you think you're reasonably intelligent. I think I'm extremely intelligent. But we both have to acknowledge that neither of us really know as much as the great geniuses who work in the media industry in America. Mainly mega liberal giants like the New York Times. You see people, you think you know politics just because you read books, just because you know about the economy, just because you know about taxes and spending. You don't know anything about politics, not like the New York Times does. You want to talk about people who have their finger on the pulse of America? Let us go through the list of endorsements, presidential endorsements of the New York Times. 1980, they told you Jimmy Carter was going to win. Nailed it. 84, they called it for Mondale. 88, Dukakis. You know what? Just read the list for yourself. You see where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen. There's nobody less in touch with the actual voting public in the United States of America than liberal rags from major cities. And it's not even totally their fault. I can't blame them for not having the pulse of the regular American citizen. Why? They're in New York City. Now, I love New York City. Full disclosure, I'm not one of these guys from Texas. I hate the big city. Bunch of crazy stuff there. I love New York City. But if you're a person who resides in New York City and you work in the New York Times, how often do you talk to a blue-collar worker? How often do you talk to somebody who goes to church? Ever? Rarely? These people have no idea. You live, work, and don't worship in a bubble. So they don't know what normal Americans think, and that's fine as long as you knew that you didn't know. Is that the way to say that? You know what I'm saying. I know what I don't know. I would never sit down and advise somebody, well, you know, these are the proper brain surgery techniques. What you really need to do is hold the scalpel, right? I wouldn't do that because I don't know. I went to community college. However, the New York Times, and look, they're not the only one, and all these major rags genuinely think that they know who will win and they know who should win. So, of course, the New York Times, let us not forget, by the way, I should bring this up, gave Hillary Clinton a 93% chance of victory. 93% on my life. So that tells you, yeah, they were real close. Now, the New York Times made their endorsement for the Democratic primary. Now, I know you're going to find this shocking, but we already know who they're going to endorse once the Democrat primary has been decided, and I have a clue for you. It's not going to be Donald Trump. However, they made their primary endorsement, and the funniest part of this whole thing is more than one person saw this coming. They said the New York Times is going to try to endorse Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar. Why? Because it's I am woman, hear me roar time. It's that time where women are the best and women are saints and we really need a woman instead of we just really need somebody qualified. We just really need somebody good. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to weather the transition of the National Democratic Party. You see, you need a woman. All right, if you're the New York Times, all right, it's got to be a woman. All right, let's make sure about that. Well, do we go hardcore socialist like Elizabeth Warren or somebody who at least tries to pretend to be a little bit more moderate like Klobuchar? I'll tell you what, we've got to do them both. And this is the problem the Democrat Party nationally is facing as well. Amy Klobuchar, even though she's more likely to spit on you and throw a binder at you if you listen to her former staffers, Amy Klobuchar actually has a decent chance at gaining some traction nationally because she comes off like more of a moderate. But Elizabeth Warren, her brand, her radical Medicare for all socialist brand, That's the future of the Democrat Party. Those are the people who are voting in primaries, and that's the direction the party's going. So, of course, the New York Times just said, we don't want to get pinned on an actual decision. Let's endorse them both. Elizabeth Warren, who is absolutely drowning, of course, came out with a tweet right after saying, quote, I guess Amy Klobuchar and I are now both undefeated in elections and undefeated in New York Times endorsements. All right, congratulations. Well, one has to wonder, how could they not go with Bernie Sanders? I mean, you can say it's probably just because he was a man, and this is, of course, the year of the woman. Women are the best. Well, I guess when you take a little peek inside of Bernie's interview process with the New York Times, you might see how he didn't quite endear himself to the staff.
Look, I don't tolerate terribly well. And I come from a different background than a lot of other people who run the country. I'm not good at backslapping. I'm not good at pleasantries. If you have your birthday, I'm not going to call you up to congratulate you, so you love me and you write nice things about me. That's not what I do. Never have. And I take that as a little bit of a criticism, self-criticism. I've been amazed at how many people respond to, happy birthday. Oh, Bernie, thanks so much for calling. You know, it works. It's just not my style. I try to stay focused on the important issues facing working families in this country, and I fight for them.
You know what? That's the most I've ever liked Bernie. I don't care about you. I don't care about your birthday. I'm not patting you on the back, and I'm not calling you either. Screw you. Anyway, are we done here? Do I have your endorsement? You could tell the people of the New York Times staff, who obviously take themselves very seriously, they were horrified by that. Well, Elizabeth Warren, who is clearly one of the least self-aware people of all time, had this to say about lying and getting to be president.
Is it disqualifying for a presidential candidate to lie to the American public about anything?
I would think that how could the American people want someone who lies to them? I think that we just do our best out there every day. And I hope that's what happens with everyone.
I love that part, not because of what she said. I mean, how could the American people want someone who lies? It's because you could tell for about the first 10 seconds after he asked the question, you could tell she's thinking, oh man, he's kind of talking about me. Let's not forget, this is a woman who pretended to be an American Indian for decades. She pretended to be one so much, she was on camera talking about I think it was her parents who had to elope because there couldn't be an interracial relationship. She submitted an Indian recipe to Pow Wow Chow. All my life, I'm not making that up. Her entire life has been a lie. Her entire political career. Even Democrats are like, she's not really truthful. That doesn't look good. And then, let us not forget about endorser number 2, or the receiver of endorsement number 2, Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota who nobody had ever heard of before the presidential election started, and now only 9 out of 10 people have never heard of her before. Amy Klobuchar got famous because as soon as she jumped in the race, a bunch of her ex-staffers came out and said, she has the highest staff turnover rate on the Hill because she's pretty much Godzilla in the office. She screams at people and verbally abuses everybody. Apparently she chucked a binder at somebody one time. So look, the New York Times made their endorsement. It's very important. It's a very serious day. And look, maybe it is a good day, because you have to think, as soon as Amy Klobuchar found out she got the endorsement from New York Times last night, she was probably in a good mood, and that's one more staffer who didn't get abused last night. Good for them. Congratulations. To talk about this and other things, Sarah Gonzalez of Blaze TV joins us in just a second. Hang on. Joining me now to talk about the New York Times and other things, host of the news and why it matters on Blaze TV, Sarah Gonzalez. Sarah, before we get into who the New York Times actually endorsed, can you explain to me why papers and newsrooms, why they're still making endorsements? Where did that even come from? Why are they still doing it? If I was an industry that struggled with credibility like they do, I would kind of shut up about picking sides for once. Do something where you don't pick a side.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting the lack of self-awareness that the mainstream media and the news outlets have these days, because if they had any self-awareness whatsoever, they would understand that people aren't relying on them anymore. I understand that it started out that, you know, the New York Times, the news publications, the newspapers were the only place that you could find out real facts about the candidates that you were interested in, and they were actually delivering, you know, real facts and real truth. But obviously, every American knows that that's not the case anymore. They're only, you know, they're only purporting what they want you to know. They're only picking who is, you know, pushing forth their agenda that they want to enact. So I don't know why they keep doing it. I think that the best answer I can give you is they just lack any self-awareness whatsoever. I don't know one single person who relies on someone like the New York Times to tell them who to vote for, especially not after this year.
Are we in a bubble, though? And I ask this genuinely, because obviously the media is clearly in a bubble. It's all made in New York or Washington, D.C., so they clearly can't connect with regular Americans, which is not a problem because you're in Texas, I'm in Texas, so we don't struggle with this. But are we in a bubble with the liberal mind? I mean, because I'd say the same thing you said. Well, no one listens to the New York Times. But do they? Do liberals wake up and actually genuinely want to know what the New York Times has to say?
Maybe the elitists, right? Maybe the elitists, but I know that the blue collar Democrats that are, you know, they're working hard, they're part of flyover country. I really don't think that they are listening to the New York Times and taking to heart who the New York Times says they should be voting for, especially if you look at their track record. I mean, they have historically not really been on par with who America wants in office. You know, they endorsed Hillary Clinton. I believe they endorsed John Kasich. And the list goes on when you look at when they've been right and when they've been wrong in who the American people want to become president. So I don't think that we live in a bubble, only because I believe that, you know, the blue collar Democrats agree that the New York Times does not speak for them. Now, who's to say maybe they might vote the same way, but I don't think that the blue collar Democrats are taking the New York Times too seriously. I'm sure the elitists are, though.
Sarah, did Bernie Sanders in another life somehow find a way to offend everybody at the DNC, in CNN, in the New York Times? And I genuinely, this fascinates me. Most things I can figure out because I'm so intelligent. This one has me completely lost. Bernie Sanders is a card-carrying socialist. He agrees with everything they love at CNN and the New York Times and the DNC. And apparently they all hate him and do everything they can to knife the guy in the back. What did Bernie do wrong?
Well, Bernie Sanders, you're right. He does push forth all of the agendas that they are for. He is a card-carrying socialist, and they should be on board with that. But the thing that he has that is not going for him is that, unfortunately, he is an old white guy. And we are told time and time again by the left that an old white guy is just not going to cut it. So I don't think that Bernie Sanders has done anything wrong other than been a victim of his own race and, you know, his own age, because he should be the candidate that they should be rooting for at this point. But, you know, for whatever reason, they, you know, it's interesting because they typically will say things and then do the opposite. They don't practice what they preach. The same is going here, you know, but in, you know, I think that in writing, in the paper, they're putting, you should vote for these people, you know, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar. I don't know that I see them, you know, I've seen them defending Bernie Sanders. So I think it depends on the occasion when they follow through with their own advice. At this time, an old white man just can't cut it.
You know what I think it probably is, Sarah? It's that accent. It's that horrible Northeast accent that all these New Yorkers and Vermont people have. Why can those people not say they're ours? It's weird.
He's also very angry. He is very angry, and I think that that's very off-putting for people. I did also see an interview with him, I believe with the New York Times, where he came off and just said, I'm not good in pleasantries and niceties. I'm just here to lobby for the American worker. And so I think that, you know, places like the New York Times are not familiar with someone who isn't there to just try to, you know, to try to play games and to try to engage in niceties just to get that little pat on the back. That's not who Bernie is, and I don't think they like that.
Okay, now let's deal with the actual two candidates who got the endorsement. Elizabeth Warren, look, I don't get it, but she clearly has taken that left-wing, super left-wing portion of the Democrat primary. She's trying to crowd Bernie out of that lane. You know, the press kind of goes all in for us. We've seen, so I get that that's why she's still around. How is Amy Klobuchar still a thing? And I'm genuinely not about to say this to be mean for the first time ever. I am a very mean person, but I'm not saying this to be mean. What is she? I mean, everyone else is easy to describe in the Democrat primary. You know what Joe Biden is. He's the former vice president. Bernie Sanders, the crazy old socialist. Elizabeth Warren sounds like a dying turkey. Like, everyone has their thing, their lane. I don't even know what Klobuchar stands for. I watched every debate. I pay attention to the whole thing. Who is she?
Yeah, and you know, the thing that strikes me about Klobuchar is every single time I see her in these debates, anytime she gets a chance to speak, she looks like a wet chihuahua. She's shaking. She looks like she's very terrified to speak, which is bizarre to me because she's been a politician long enough. She's been on this debate stage long enough that it shouldn't scare her to get up there and deliver these remarks. But, you know, I did hear Mike Lee once say that if there were any of the candidates up there that he had to choose for who was to defend the Constitution the most, he actually said Amy Klobuchar, which was shocking to me, but you'll hear it in some of the things she says while she's trying to appeal to, you know, the far left because she knows she needs some of them in order to make a run for this. There is a more moderate side of her that if you really pay attention, you will see come out, which is unfortunately why I don't think she will do well in this primary. I'm shocked she's still there, but I think that that will be ultimately her downfall. Not only that she looks like a wet chihuahua, but also that she just is too moderate for the crowd. She's too soft-spoken. She doesn't have that X factor to get her where she needs to be in this Democratic primary.
Sarah, do you have to be somewhat good-looking to be president of the United States? And I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, I mean, you look at the people who have been, the people who've gained traction, especially in the TV era. Now, I'm not here to say that, you know, Donald Trump should be a male model, but in the TV era, they're all kind of photogenic, right?
I will say this. I wouldn't say that you have to be attractive or photogenic in order to be America's president, but I will say I do think that the voters want someone who is attractive and who is photogenic. I do think that that is maybe even subconsciously, I don't know if voters will admit to it all the time, but I do think that that does play a really huge factor in who voters for. Call it, you know, what you will. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I think it's just human nature that nobody wants an ugly president, right?
Well, that's how I vote. I vote on looks alone. Sarah Gonzalez, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about an American hero. No, not just me. Hang on. Well, this is a good day for everybody in America and a good day to celebrate enlisted men in the United States military. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the United States military is separated between officers and enlisted. And officers are fine. I mean, most of them are useless. They're like doctors and lawyers and teachers, where 99% of them are useless, but the one decent one you have can actually change your life, so I'll give them that. Enlisted men build the United States military. It's what I was, and that's what Mr. Hero Doris Miller was from World War II in Pearl Harbor. Many of you have seen the movie where Cuba Gooding Jr. gets done boxing somebody, and then while everyone else is dying and fighting, gets up and gets on a machine gun and starts sending Japanese pilots to the afterlife. Yeah, that guy was a real person, and he was even more awesome in real life than he was in the movies. His name is Doris Miller, and he now has a ship named after him in the United States, a new aircraft named after him in the United States Navy. Doris Miller, boss. Good for him. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day, everybody. Tell your kids about Martin Luther King Jr. He did some great things in this country. I'll see you tomorrow.